Welcome to the Flourish with Neural Retraining podcast. I'm your host, Madeline Lowry, founder of Twin Cities Neural Retraining and a certified MAP method practitioner specializing in anxiety, sensitivities, and chronic symptoms and health conditions. Join me for episode 63, where we talk with my client Wendi about her experience with the MAP method for chronic gut and immune issues and severe headaches. Hear about her experience and how her physical symptoms improved, along with other positive benefits, including more mental clarity and focus, personal insights, and a feeling of empowerment. The MAP method is an advanced method of neural retraining. It is the latest energy psychology method, an advance over EMDR and tapping or EFT. Sessions are done at a distance over Zoom video conference. Each session is focused on a topic, which you identify with the help of the practitioner. The sessions are generally meditative and relaxing. As always, we must disclaim that the information we share in the podcast is for educational purposes only. As MAP method practitioners, we do not diagnose or treat disease. Instead, we work with the person and the personality to optimize health. Now, let's hear from Wendi. Well, welcome, Wendi. I'm so excited to have you join me on my podcast. It's very nice to have you come and tell us a little bit about your experiences with the MAP method. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Wendi, maybe you can just start out by telling us a little bit about how you heard about the MAP method and why you decided to try it.
Well, it felt quite serendipitous for me to find out about the MAP method. I had been experiencing a number of health-related symptoms for a while that were challenging me, and I had tried a lot of different things, and I had come to the decision that there must be something subconsciously that was happening, that because I tried therapy, I felt very mentally healthy. I tried some physical approaches, I tried functional medicine, and I just felt like there's something happening that's in my body that I can't consciously access. And so I was just Google searching. I was thinking, how do you access that subconscious part of oneself to try to address whatever might be happening in my body? And actually, you popped up right away. So that's how you were my introduction to the MAP method. I found your podcast in Googling. I can't remember exactly the search terms that I was using, but it must have been something about subconscious and health, and your podcast popped up. So I watched a couple of your episodes, and I saw that you had a link to sign up for a consultation with you, and that was how I found out. I hadn't heard about it prior to that.
Wow. Okay. So you're the rare person that found it first. Usually people hear about the MAP method in other ways, and then they kind of filter down. But yeah. Okay. Well, great. When you came to the MAP method, and you talked about this a little bit, but what were you hoping to address? You talked about kind of what you've tried in the past that maybe was helpful, but didn't get to the root causes of what you were hoping, to resolve. When you heard about this method, what were you thinking, you might be able to resolve by working with the subconscious mind directly?
Well, what I think really resonated with me was some of the things that I read, both, I read some stuff you had on your site. I also then did read more broadly about the MAP method. But what really resonated for me was I was aware that I'm a highly sensitive person. I have been my entire life, and I've struggled with a lot of different sensitivities to things my entire life. And I did have a more recent chapter with more health-related challenges related to my gut function, my bladder function, headaches. So things that I had over my lifetime, but I was having a particular flare up. But what really resonated, and I had restricted my diet quite a bit, and I was just feeling like this wasn't really working. And I would have periods of feeling better, but it would, it would retreat again. And I just felt like there were, so I wanted to figure out, like, wow, if there was something that could help me with the degree to which I am sensitive in the world generally, I think that was the thing that was most exciting. And it felt like that connection between those physical health symptoms and that sort of, I don't know, personality or other kind of wiring. It does feel like just wiring. And it was so exciting to think about that there might be a way to address that wiring that has just always felt like me and who I am. And I there are assets, of course, to that, but there are also these major challenges. And being able to like desensitize was particularly exciting. And I wanted to, I think the gut function was probably the primary thing that was bothering me, and the, restricted diet and wanting to just be able to liberalize again. So those were really the main things that I was attracted to.
Yeah. And so now that you've been through, well, about 4 sessions, what would you say has been the result? What have you noticed? What kinds of shifts, or, what has made you think, yeah, this was, this is something positive for me?
There are so many answers to that question, because from the first session, I felt like, oh my gosh, this was exactly what I was looking for. And I felt, my gut function improved after the first session. It was pretty dramatic right away. That was clear for me, that was like, okay, this is definitely working. And the first session that you do, where you have, your client focus on something emotional to be able to gauge what's happening in a way that's tangible for us. And so to go in with, I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to talk with you about. We went through a couple of, it took a few minutes for me to work to the like thing that made the most sense to address. But then to feel in that session, that's something that I had been dealing with that was emotionally charged for me, and to feel that charge go down and be able to talk about a situation where at the beginning of can't remember if it was 60 or 90 minute session, at the beginning of a 60 or 90 minute session, to feel how emotional something was for me, that I was, tearing up a little bit, just telling you what was happening in the situation that we were going to address. And then in the end, to be able to talk about that situation, feeling very empowered in my own experience of that situation, seeing the situation from an entirely new perspective. That, again, this was something I had talked through in talk therapy before for quite some time. And I knew intellectually where I was trying to get to, but I was not fully embodied there. And after one session, it was like I was completely there. It felt miraculous, but and then the feeling during the session was also just, I guess it feels like a relief of things happening. So I think I lost my train of thought, but anyways, I don't remember where we started, but anyways, the whole thing has been just, incredibly positive of an experience for me. And we did go through like each session we've kind of addressed. Some of them have been related. Ultimately, it feels like we get to the root of issues. And in terms of like the emotional part of my life experiences, I would say, it's really felt unbelievable how quickly in our sessions we are getting to the roots of the patterns, the behavioral patterns that I established unconsciously as a young child and continued to live with without realizing or appreciating how those things are causing me stress. And so whenever I've seen, you see doctors or you read things and it's like, there's stress related health issues. And it's like, well, I don't feel stressed because I've lived with it my entire life. I don't realize how I've established my patterns. I can't consciously address them or change them. So being able to work with the MAP method in this way, it just feels like the key to lifelong challenges across the emotional, mental, and physical realm. And it connects in a way that I didn't fully appreciate, despite reading a lot of things and understanding a lot of things, So it's been amazing.
Yeah. So you're one of the, I would say, more rare people that has, that experiences physical changes, and after the first session. This is not common, though often it is sort of the kind of the gut issues, or like sometimes it's the skin issues that will respond kind of earlier. Most of the time I do say, like the first 1 to 3 sessions, we're kind of working more on an emotional, mental level. And then by session 4, 5, 6, somewhere in there, we start to see shifts on a physical level. It happened faster for you, and that was very encouraging for you. But I think even for the person that doesn't have that same experience that you did, I think it's still encouraging to be able to feel the emotional relief, and to have that perspective shift that you're talking about, and to be able to, it's not just for the duration of the session, is what I want to bring out here is like, you start to show up in your life differently. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. And I will say that, while my gut issues improved, it has been, I think we've done 3 or 4 sessions now, and it hasn't, consistently stuck. It's better overall. But anyways, just to say, like, I can tell that there are roller coasters a little bit, and still work for me to do. But in terms of showing up differently, I think the thing that's interesting is it does provide a sense of, empowerment is such an overused term, but it does feel very empowering to be able to approach life again without feeling like a victim of my sensitivities or these other things that have challenged me in my life, but being able to see them from a different way, feel much more confident and comfortable with them, and feel like they don't have to control me in negative ways. And I can then look at how I can use those things as assets in my life, and not just feel like I keep waiting to receive the challenges that they bring to me. And I would definitely say that the overall feelings stick. I think I described at some point what the experience felt like it was like a way of doing mental house cleaning that otherwise, I really couldn't figure out how to do. But I would say over the course of time since we've begun, my ability to have attention and focus has really improved. I feel like some of the clutter that I had accumulated in my brain has cleared out. So everything feels clearer. And I have a much more firm sense of across the realm, in work, in my, personal life, in my relationship with myself, I guess, like all of it feels much clearer. Like I have better focus, and I feel more powerful in me being myself, and then engaging in ways that feel healthy and productive. And I think it's interesting to me in terms of like it's how it all goes in a positive direction. But I would say that it all feels very positive. I haven't noticed any ways in which anything that's happened has caused me concern. I feel more myself rather than like just a better version of myself, growing into a better version of myself, I guess is how I would describe it. Yeah. And it's, it sticks. It doesn't seem to retreat. I have used, you provided audio files after the first session or 2. I have used those. I have found those to be extremely helpful. Again, just it reproduces the feeling in my brain that is very relaxing, which is what it feels like in the sessions, that sort of feeling of like decluttering, cleaning up, getting focus or clarity. It's hard to describe exactly what that feeling feels like. I guess there's a peacefulness to it that, those audio files also seem to help to reproduce. And when I'm experiencing something that might be heading me down a path that might feel emotionally challenging, or one of the chronic physical issues that I struggle with coming up, that, those also seem to help. So using that in between sessions has been really helpful.
Yeah. 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 And so, yeah, I like the way you talked about doing, these sessions are kind of a way of doing mental house cleaning. And you also talked about how, the physical symptoms kind of wax and wane. And this is very typical, right? So I like to describe the MAP method it's not a miracle. It is a process, right? Because by the time you've been alive for several decades, there are a lot of, especially when we're talking about physical symptoms, there are multiple roots to these physical symptoms. And so there are often, I should say, multiple roots. And so it can take the cumulative effect of several sessions to break down a pattern completely. So we may work on each session, we're kind of working on one root. We kind of pick one topic, like you said, you come and you'll have a few different ideas, and we kind of figure out what the priority is for the session. The session may be focused around a particular relationship challenge or a work challenge or a feeling of guilt or, something else going on in your life that is weighing on you. And so this is like an entry point for us. It is a thread that your subconscious mind can follow to the original root cause, so to speak. And though we don't have to know what it is, and at any point, your subconscious mind seems to be able to trace that back and resolve, some of the learned behaviors around it, right? Some of the programming around it. This may not make a lot of sense to people listening to the podcast if they've never experienced a MAP method session before, but it becomes clearer. Like I like to tell people, usually within 3 sessions, if this is going to be a method that you want to pursue. You'll have, not that your physical symptoms will be gone, but emotionally, mentally, you're starting to observe shifts. You're starting to understand why you have some of the health challenges that you do. And you're starting to understand the magnitude of the, you talked about like personality and wiring, right? Like of the ways in which you may want to approach life differently that will be more empowering for you instead of, just being laden with challenges and burdens. And so, I think that's what the MAP method sessions offer us in terms of a way to start kind of unbundling these hidden sources of stress. You talked about, how you understood that your physical symptoms could be a manifestation of stress in your life, but there was no clear way of figuring out how to dismantle that, right? And through the MAP method and through a set of sessions focusing on different threads in each time, it is a way for us to be able to start to clear what I like to call like layers of subconscious stress, because we all carry subconscious sources of stress. We don't know what they are because they are not apparent to the conscious mind. I mean, you may know, oh, I had a traumatic childhood, or this traumatic thing happened to me, or I've been going through a lot of health issues or challenges. And those, even just being someone who has gone through health issues and challenges, like those involve usually a series of traumas, really painful emotional experiences, right? And so, all of these are kind of like little arrows helping to point us to important things that we may need to address going on in the subconscious mind. But even if you don't know any of that, right? I work with plenty of people that say, well, I don't have that many memories from my childhood, but I have these migraines, or I have this, I have eczema or psoriasis or some kind of, skin issue. I have gut issues. I have asthma or trouble breathing. I have brain fog. I have chronic fatigue, right? I don't work with formal diagnoses. I work with the symptoms. How is it what is it in your life that is limiting you, And so even if all you know is that there's a symptom and it's limiting me, or there's this conditioned behavior that I have and I can't stop it, compulsivity, a thought, that I can't seem to let go of. Even that's enough for us to work on. It's enough of a clue, a topic. Yeah. Do you want to comment on that a little bit, or how you saw that showing up in your own sessions?
Well, one of the things that what you just talked about was making me think about, I feel like the medical model is not very respectful of people who struggle with chronic issues that are challenging for medicine to find the root cause of and diagnose and treat. And so as myself, someone who has had very odd reactions to viral infections and odd reactions to things. I mean, I've had gut issues since birth, but there hasn't been a lot of help from doctors, and it has consistently felt frustrating and like someone's accusing you of like something being all in your head in a very negative way. And I guess what I think of the MAP method is like, it's not these things aren't in our heads, they're in our bodies. They're intricate ways in which our nervous systems are responding to protect us, trying to do good for us, but actually, creating some harms. And I feel like the MAP method then, for those of us who struggle like that, where medicine can't really be helpful and often does cause emotional pain because you go to seek help and it's like, this problem is you. And you're like, well, okay, that'd be great, but like everything that's accessible to me doesn't work to help it. And as far as I can tell, I'm doing everything I need to be doing for myself. I feel like this is, again, an empowering key to it is in our bodies. And in a way that we can't tap into. There's no amount of conscious work that I think I could have done to get here. And I feel like it then feels much more respectful and, like I said, empowering that, like, yes, however I'm wired, whatever has happened to me in my life, created this set of conditions that resulted in these symptoms that I was having. And it's not because I'd done something wrong or I'm intentionally, there's something wrong in my head, like I'm such a mess, I can't, think straight or whatever. Not that anyone in the world is, but just saying, you start to feel like that's how people are treating you. And I feel like this is such a powerful way of saying, it's like that, the body keeps the score book, like this is such a powerful way of accessing, like, yes, your body has kept the score. Your conscious mind can't really help you. I mean, maybe it can, but we're struggling scientifically with what that looks like. And this method feels like this is a really beautiful way that actually you can access that connection between our life experiences, our emotional wiring, our nervous systems, and our physical symptoms through how you can access the subconscious mind and go through these sessions. And like you said, like peel the layers, do the housekeeping, that otherwise feels like really, I haven't found anything else that, was able to help so easily, peacefully, in a way that feels good and is really easy. So in that way, again, I hear you that this is no miracle, but it just does feel like something, something's happening in a way that you could spend decades and lots of medical appointments and psychological appointments and nothing else really can do it. And I would say for me, it's been, I can't remember 3 or 4 sessions, but like in that time, it feels like years worth of, after years of other things in 3 or 4 sessions, it's a dramatic difference, both emotionally, mentally, and physically.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the potential of working with the subconscious mind, which people don't fully get, right? As you said, the medical model in the United States, so this is the unfortunate thing. Like we have invested, we as a society, as a culture, have invested so much in this medical model that regards us, our bodies as kind of a mechanical system, very mechanical, right? And if they can't figure out what's broken, through lab tests or physical assessment, it is frustrating, I think, to practitioners as well in this medical model, right? Because they are trained to look for what's broken and then fix it, either through surgery, physical therapy, medications, or other kinds of therapeutics. And so when they can't correlate your constellation of symptoms to a diagnosis, then there's no recipe, and there are a lot of people with chronic symptoms that fall into that category. Or maybe they have maybe they get the diagnosis, but the diagnosis doesn't really lead to a very satisfying course of treatment, And I feel like with the MAP method, we can help people who are open to it, right? To start making these connections. Like, why do I have these symptoms, right? It's not that your body is broken. It's not like you were healthy and now you're not, and there's no way to get back to that state of health. It's like your subconscious mind runs all the systems of the body. It always has. This is one thing that should be taught in school, from early grades. But the subconscious mind has always been kind of a black box, and we haven't had a good way to really engage with it. An easy, simple, efficient way to engage with it. It's always kind of pushed to the side. It's not acknowledged. It's not brought into the conversation. And some people are afraid of going into the subconscious mind. They don't want to know what lurks there. Well, I mean, in MAP sessions, it's not like we're going to dredge up all the bad, it's not like that. It's not like you have to relive the traumas or anything like that. If you want to work on a particular painful memory, like we do in the first session, like you talked about, the very first session, the 1 hour session, the introductory session is we take a painful emotional memory and we have your subconscious mind heal it, in the sense of the emotional intensity is reduced. We're not erasing the memory. You still have the memory. It's just that your feelings about it are different, a different level of intensity by the end. And you may have insights or new perspectives on that situation that also contribute to a feeling of being able to accept it more readily, than maybe you were able to before. So yes, even in one session, we can resolve some of the painful emotional intensity around a known trauma. But even aside from that, that's kind of like the demonstration session, right? Is MAP going to work for you? Aside from that, we can take a number of different things as a topic for a session, including symptoms. And you and I did a session like that, working with triggers for headaches. And in doing that can bring up things, that maybe you didn't connect before. But, for the right person, it is very reassuring. Like, oh, I'm starting to understand, why I have this symptom, why it's become chronic. And I'm starting to understand sort of how I've been living my life that laid the foundation for this, and now I have options, right? It's not about making people bad or wrong. It's not about blaming people for, the issues that they've been living with, the challenges that they're facing. It's really what I hope I can do as a MAP practitioner for every person that comes to see me is empower them. The method is about empowering you. It is not about making you dependent on a practitioner. It is about helping the person take control of their lives in a positive way to the extent that they want to, some people want to, some people start to see, understand things. They have insights. Oh, okay. I see what I need to do here. and I'm willing to do it, and others are not so ready for that. And that's okay. Wherever you are, that's where we start from. So I said a lot there. Maybe you brought up something for you about, what your experiences of sessions were like.
Well, the thought that occurred to me as you were talking was really, I guess I would say it feels like a pathway to freedom, because in owning one's own set of traits, characteristics, behaviors, understanding better how certain patterns got established and being able to see connections differently. I mean, you pointed out in a session to me that I was like thinking about something in a way I really had no idea, that I was like, worried about something that was very positive in my life, but that was causing me certain stress because I felt like I didn't deserve to have the happiness. And I had no idea I was doing that, and that was connecting to some symptoms. I mean, so understanding that that's what's happening, that like I'm subconsciously doing that to it just feels like, oh my gosh, what a relief to know. And again, like something like that, there's no other way I would have ever figured that out, because consciously I wasn't aware. And so, for a therapist to work on that with me, if I have no idea, it's really hard for them to figure it out. So it just feels so freeing. And it's a release. It's an emotional release, a mental release, a physical release. Like I can feel my body relaxing when we get to some of these things, because it's like, oh, I didn't realize I was holding tension or stress around certain things. And like, I can let it go, and that frees me up to focus on all kinds of other things and move in other directions that are much more positive, rather than, again, ways in which my subconscious mind is holding on to things, again, to protect me, I'm sure, but it just doesn't quite work out that way. And instead it winds up causing, harms. So yeah, I just feel like it's a path to freedom, to be able to direct one's energies and life in a different way, and own things differently. And then also, I don't know, but it's like, well, then if, there are real physical things that do happen in our bodies that aren't necessarily all related to this, but then it's like, at least you feel, okay, I know, like I have a real physical symptom I need to really address. I feel like, that can also be empowering in a situation in a medical context, where I have more clarity, I guess. And, I understand better what some of the other symptoms are, and that will free me up to understand different ones if they happen to arise over time.
Right. When you're having a heart attack, you don't want the MAT method. You want the ambulance, right? I will be the first one to say this is not for everything, but as you described before, it's the chronic symptoms, right? That, so Western medicine's fantastic when it comes to acute situations. The chronic symptoms are often where the toolbox doesn't include enough. And even, you mentioned, therapy, like even talk therapy, wonderful though it is, it just doesn't seem to go deep enough, quickly enough for people to experience resolution of some of the blocks and barriers subconsciously, right, that need to be cleared so that health can be restored. As we've been talking, I've been thinking about this quote from the spiritual writer Caroline Myss. She says, "Your biography becomes your biology." Mm. And I think that's very true in a way. This is what I see day in and day out working with clients, is that it is about our experiences in life. It is about how we perceive the meaning, the significance that we give to those experiences. And sometimes we don't even know what that is on a conscious level, as you said, because it's just our reality, right? It's hard to be objective about your own reality, right? Who can do that? That's the advantage of working with a practitioner. It's like the practitioner can help you, is observing, is listening, is looking for the patterns. And when you have a lot of experience doing this, you start to pick up on them more quickly. I start to see things in people because, this is what I do. And so it is helpful just to have that other perspective. Not that I'm ever putting something on someone else. I'm not here to be right. I'm here to offer opinions and perspectives, and you choose. It's always your choice what resonates with you. Often I'm like putting things out there, and I'm waiting to see, what really resonates with you, because that helps me figure out, like, oh yes, we need to go more in this direction, or it's more about this than that. And so that is, that helps us to guide the sessions too.
It has been remarkable for me, my experience working with you. It's been remarkable, the things that you've offered, the insights that you've offered, and I mean, how fast and deep and on the money, really, they have felt. And I mean, I remember, I think it was our second session, you started asking me about, what happened when I was 6, and I had no idea. And a couple of weeks later, we had another session, and I thought about it for 2 weeks. Like, what happened when I was 6? I had no idea. I couldn't think of anything that happened when I was 6. But then in the third session, 6 came up again, and you didn't remember that you had said something about being 6 to me. But I sure did, because I'd been thinking for a couple of weeks about what, and then in that moment, in that session, all of the sudden, I remembered something that happened when I was 6 that made so much sense as being the root of this pattern that I had established of, subverting my own needs because of something that was going on in my family when I was 6 years old that, had not registered in my conscious mind in a way that even over 2 weeks thinking about it, it came up to me, but was a major experience that I don't really remember, but it made so much sense. So something like that was like, it would have taken me forever. I never would have come up with that. Right. So, but it makes so much sense, and it really helps. And again, like that part of like owning my pattern and feeling empowered by it, not victim to it, it's like, I can empathize with a 6-year-old who made that decision that established a framework and a set of wiring and a pattern that I then continued to operate with my whole life. And I can own that that's my choice and my pattern, and that I was 6 years old, and that there's really nothing I could expect my 6-year-old self to do. So again, in that way, right, it's like, it feels good to understand, like, oh, I just can have empathy and compassion for myself and feel like, own it. It's mine. I did it. I continued to do it, and I don't have to continue to do it. I can, like you're saying, I can make a different choice now, fully appreciating like why I made the choices I did and what the results were. And and then it just feels good. Like, oh, that's so great. It feels really good to understand it, to own it, and to be able to shift it as I want to now in order to serve me better and relieve some of those health issues that I associate with that pattern.
Yeah. So that's a perfect example. So the practitioner is like not just listening to you consciously, right? The practitioner has been trained, MAT practitioners are trained to use their intuition to help you find root causes. And so, you're talking about this episode at age 6. What people don't understand is that the brain is very much like a computer, and our experiences early in life, especially when we're young, this can happen at any point during life as well. Our response to stressful situations, to traumas, right? It kind of sets a neurological pattern of dealing with things. As you said, a framework, right? A structure, a conditioned behavior, a pattern. It is amazing how those early experiences can establish a pattern that will follow you through life, because you don't even realize you're running that program. That's become part of the operating system of your mind. And until you get to a point where you can see it. And it's also interesting that you talked about, for 2 weeks, you couldn't think of what the memory was, but then when we were together again, all of a sudden the memory came up. And this also is something I see in sessions, because there is kind of a connection being made between the practitioner's subconscious mind and the client's subconscious mind that just helps. It's just like I don't know, plugging into a battery or something. I don't know. It just seems to help bring things to mind, insights, perspectives, memories, new ways of seeing things that doesn't happen just on your own. There is something about the relationship between the practitioner and the client that just makes that easier in a session. That, again, these are things that are special about the MAP method that can help a person find those root causes. And then once you have, oh, that pattern can be changed. I don't have to live by that. It's like going in and making a bug fix in the operating system of your mind. I mean, we're familiar with this when it comes to our smartphones or our computers, but we can also do this, with the programming of the subconscious mind. We can decide, I don't want to live like that anymore. I want to live like this. And I'm not saying it happens in one session. It is something that we can work on. Sometimes those same decisions have been made over several different situations have contributed to it. So it can take more than one session for sure, but that's hope, right? I mean, things that you didn't even realize were patterns that didn't have to be there anymore, now can be changed. So that's part of the work that we can do with MAP sessions. So again, maybe you can talk a little bit about, would you recommend this as a method to other people, and what kinds of people, what kinds of issues or situations, from what you know, just after 4 sessions?
From my very limited knowledge, at this point, I feel like I recommend it to everybody, because we all carry, even for people without physical symptoms, we all carry those, the emotional wiring. And I think for most of us, particularly in our society, as we've been living, here, most people, I think, have some kind of emotional, mental wiring that is not serving them well, that they could work on and that could be relieved. So, I know there are many people in my life think could really benefit. And then certainly, obviously for people who are having physical symptoms, and I think there was a session where you said something to me like, I would say I'm a highly sensitive, empathic person, and living in this culture is challenging as that. I don't know what would it be like in other cultures. I do think some cultures, are better suited to people like me than maybe this one is and has been, but I don't know that to be true because I don't have another experience. But I do think for people like me, this is a really helpful method, because I think if you're sensitive and empathic, you are absorbing a lot of things that are happening in your world, whether you have your own, highly traumatic life experiences or not, but just living in the world can be traumatic in a way for people like that. And so I feel like, looking into it, and sort of, even if it were just a kind of a house cleaning, could be helpful for people before symptoms appear, because I think it is really hard to be in the world having, challenging experiences, as if you're a sponge for all the harms and hurts and pain that anyone might be experiencing, or that we're socially constructing. That there's a lot, and there's clearly a lot of people struggling now, particularly after COVID, and we're seeing it more and more. So I feel like there are so many people holding so much, that trying this as an approach to see whether it can help to create that feeling of empowerment, of being able to approach life consciously, from a perspective of feeling more whole, I guess I would call it, and being able to be oneself in the world more comfortably and confidently and peacefully. And I know we had talked about, that relationship between chronic issues and certain personality types like mine. And that I do feel like appreciating how it does and doesn't serve oneself is really helpful, and being able to then have better boundary. I mean, things again that, you can work on in therapy, but until you embody it, it's very hard to do. Like someone could tell me you should have better boundaries. And I could say, well, I hear you, but I don't know what it feels like. I don't know how to, I mean, I feel like that makes more like it's more an embodied sense of what that is now in a different way, where I can make those choices. Again, it's making choices. It's not becoming cut off to the world. It's not no longer absorbing the pain of other people, but it's making more conscious choices about it. I feel like that's what this method is helping me to grow into. I can't say that, I mean, I think that your materials suggest that there are people for whom this method isn't as helpful. And that's part, I don't really know. So for me, I just feel like, oh gosh, it feels like it could help everybody as we're sort of struggling right now, basically as a society and globally, with all kinds of issues. We're living in kind of a cruel moment, really, in history, socially, politically. And so I think for a lot of people, there's a lot of subconscious, it's hard. It's hard to be in that all the time. And more tools for more of us, I think, is part of the answer to creating that better world, better society.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I do think that there's a small percentage of people that don't benefit from the MAP method. About 2 or 3% of the people that come to do an introductory session, they just can't quite get there. We can usually suss that out in one session. So, I mean, it's worth trying. And like I said before, usually within 3 sessions, people are completely, they can see the benefits of the method for them, even if they don't have the same trajectory that you do, right? They are feeling emotional and mental shifts that are very positive and very welcome. And then, and they know, okay, this is something that I think I need to keep doing, right? I'm going to stick with this. Other people may choose to pursue another method of working with their mind. But I hope that no matter what your experience of those first 3 sessions is, that you learn the power of the mind. Even if the MAP method is not your preferred method of working with your mind, it's totally fine. But don't forget about the power of the mind. The subconscious mind is something that we haven't fully grasped as a society. And when you're that person, especially the sensitive person, right, and you find yourself grappling with physical issues, mental issues, emotional issues, even just painful, relationship issues or painful emotional memories that you would like to be more at peace with, this is certainly something that has something to offer, I think. So thank you, Wendi. I really appreciate you joining me to have this conversation today and sharing some of your experiences with the MAP method.
My pleasure. Thank you. I'm incredibly grateful to you for the work that you do. And thank you for the introduction to the method. And it's a gift to get to work with you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining me today. And I hope that people will find this conversation helpful in just helping them decide if it's something they would like to try. Thanks for joining us for the Flourish with Neural Retraining podcast. Please listen again and remember to follow us and leave a review on iTunes, Spotify, Amazon Music, Google Play, or Stitcher. Check out our free courses about the MAP method, how it works, and how we use it for mind-body healing at mapforhealth.us, or schedule your introductory session at mindremapforhealth.com. Until the next time, be well and flourish. Content of this podcast copyright 2023 by Twin Cities Neural Retraining. Music by Barbara Ben.